The health inspector arrived exactly 30 minutes before our grand opening, clipboard in hand, and a suspiciously familiar, determined look in his eyes. I recognized that expression. It was the same one my father wore when he thought he was doing something for my own good. I'm Olivia Martinez, though in the culinary world, I'm better known as Chef Liv. At 36, I've spent the last 15 years building my career in the restaurant industry, despite my parents' constant attempts to derail what they call my hobby and push me back toward medical school. "This is an unscheduled inspection," the man announced, flashing his badge. "We received an anonymous tip about potential violations." Anonymous, right? Just like the anonymous complaint that had delayed our liquor license and the anonymous calls to our suppliers questioning our credit. My parents' fingerprints were all over these roadblocks, though they were too careful to leave any actual evidence. Of course, I smiled professionally, ignoring the chaos this would cause to our opening night preparations. "James, please show the inspector our documentation while I call our restaurant group's legal team." That last part made the inspector pause. He'd probably been told this was just a small independent restaurant, an easy target for harassment. The mention of a corporate legal team clearly hadn't been part of his briefing. What my parents didn't know, what almost no one knew, was that I wasn't just opening a single restaurant. Harvest Table was the newest addition to the Verdi Restaurant Group, one of the most successful hospitality companies in California, a company I'd secretly founded 10 years ago. My parents, Dr. Robert and Dr. Catherine Martinez, probably thought they were being clever. They'd spent years trying to redirect my culinary ambitions, first with guilt. "We spent a fortune on your pre-med education." Then with manipulation. "No man will want to marry a chef." And finally with outright sabotage. When I opened my first restaurant, officially owned by a holding company to hide my involvement, they'd somehow engineered a gas leak inspection that shut us down for a week. The second restaurant faced mysterious electrical issues. By the third, I learned to operate completely under the radar, using layers of corporations and trusts to mask my ownership. Now I own 15 successful restaurants across California, each one carefully distanced from my name. I worked openly as a chef, letting everyone assume I was just another culinary professional. Meanwhile, the mysterious owner of Verdi Restaurant Group was known only as Elon Holdings, my initials hidden in plain sight. "Chef," my sous chef Marco's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "The inspector wants to check the walk-in." "Fine," I said, watching the man head toward our immaculate refrigeration unit. "But call Linda in legal anyway, and push our opening back 30 minutes. My phone buzzed. Speaking of parents, there they were. Their timing was never coincidental. "Olivia, darling," my mother's voice dripped concern. "We just heard there might be some problems with your little restaurant's opening. Maybe this is a sign that it's time to reconsider your choices. You know, Dr. Peterson at County is still willing to hold a residency spot for you." "Everything's fine, Mom," I cut her off, watching the inspector scrutinize our temperature logs. "The inspection is just a formality." "Inspection?" Her surprise would have been convincing if I hadn't known better. "Oh dear, that sounds serious. Your father and I were planning to come to your opening. But perhaps we should wait." "Actually," I said, a plan forming in my mind, "you should definitely come. In fact, I'm reserving you the best table in the house. It's time you saw what I've built." There was a slight pause. "What you've built?" "Just be here at 7, I told her. "Both of you. Dress formally. This isn't a casual dining establishment." After hanging up, I gathered my staff for an emergency meeting. These people weren't just employees. They were loyal team members who'd worked with me across multiple restaurants, though none of them knew I was their actual boss. "Listen up," I announced. "Tonight's going to be interesting. My parents are coming, and they're probably expecting to see me fail. I need everything to be absolutely perfect." The team's response was immediate and determined. They'd all heard stories about my parents over the years, seen their attempts to interfere with my career. This wasn't just professional anymore, it was personal. The health inspector left 2 hours later, frustrated at finding nothing to cite. Our documentation was perfect, our facilities immaculate. I'd learned long ago to run everything by the book, knowing my parents would look for any weakness to exploit. As evening approached, I stood in the dining room, surveying the space we created. Harvest Table was my most ambitious project yet, a farm-to-table concept that combined California's fresh ingredients with the classical techniques I'd learned in France. The decor was elegant but welcoming, with warm woods and subtle lighting that made everyone look their best. The kitchen was my pride and joy, completely open to the dining room, allowing guests to watch their food being prepared. I designed it specifically to showcase the professionalism and skill of our culinary team. Tonight, it would show my parents exactly what their hobby chef daughter could do. At 6:30, Marco approached with news that made me smile. "Chef, reservations just called. Your parents tried to change their booking to a different night. Said something came up." "Let me guess. They claimed to have a medical emergency. Hospital board meeting, actually." I nodded, having expected something like this. "Call them back. Tell them their reservation has been moved to the owner's private table and cannot be changed. And Marco, make sure they understand that LN Holdings specifically requested their presence." "You're going to tell them?" Marco asked, knowing only that I had some connection to the restaurant group's mysterious owner. "I'm going to show them," I corrected. Sometimes people need to see the truth in high definition. As the first guests began arriving, I felt the familiar energy of a restaurant coming to life. The buzz of conversations, the clink of glasses, the rhythmic sounds of knives on cutting boards. This was my real passion, the world I'd chosen despite every obstacle my parents had thrown in my path. At exactly 7 o'clock, they arrived. My father in his custom suit, my mother in designer evening wear, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. The maitre d' led them to the owner's table, the best spot in the house, with a perfect view of both the kitchen and the dining room. I watched them take in the elegant space, saw the surprise on their faces as they realized this wasn't the small-time operation they'd expected. Their expressions shifted from dismissive to confused as they noticed the Verdi Restaurant Group logo subtly incorporated into the decor. "Good evening," I said, approaching their table in my chef's whites. "Welcome to Harvest Table. Tonight's menu has been specially prepared for you." My mother started to speak, probably to make an excuse about leaving early, but I held up my hand. "Before you say anything, there's someone who'd like to meet you. The owner of Verdi Restaurant Group has been looking forward to this evening for a very long time." Their faces showed a mix of emotions: anxiety about meeting the owner they'd inadvertently been harassing, calculation as they considered how to turn this to their advantage, and underlying it all, the familiar disappointment that their daughter was just a chef. Little did they know, their whole world was about to turn upside down. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge is served at exactly the right temperature, with impeccable presentation and perfect timing. I left my parents at their table, letting them stew in anticipation while I returned to the kitchen. Through the open design, they could see me directing my team with practiced ease, expediting orders, and adding finishing touches to elaborate dishes. "They're getting nervous," Marco reported, glancing at my parents' table. "Your mother's checked her phone 6 times in the last 2 minutes." Of course she had. They were probably trying to figure out how to minimize the damage, assuming the owner would confront them about their interference. What they couldn't know was that every anonymous complaint, every attempted sabotage, had been carefully documented over the years. At precisely 7:30, I nodded to Marcus, our restaurant group's CFO, who'd flown in specially for tonight. He approached my parents' table carrying a leather portfolio embossed with the Verdi Restaurant Group logo. "Dr. and Dr. Martinez," he greeted them formally. "I'm Marcus Chen, Chief Financial Officer of Verdi Restaurant Group. Before you meet our owner, there are some documents you should review." The portfolio contained a complete history of their interference, dates, times, names of officials they'd contacted, even recordings of phone calls they'd made to our suppliers. Watching through the kitchen window, I saw their faces pale as they realized how thoroughly their actions had been tracked. "This is absurd," my father sputtered, pushing the portfolio away. "We were only trying to protect our daughter from making a terrible mistake." "A mistake?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Let's review what that mistake has produced." He pulled out another set of documents, financial reports showing the success of Verdi Restaurant Group. 15 restaurants across California, over 300 employees. Annual revenue in the millions, awards, reviews, and accolades from the culinary world's most respected critics. All of this, Marcus continued, built by someone you dismiss as making a mistake, someone who chose to follow their passion instead of your prescribed path. My mother's hand shook as she reached for her water glass. Who owns all this?" That was my cue. I removed my chef's coat, revealing a tailored blazer underneath, and walked to their table. Without a word, I sat down and pulled out my business cards. the ones I rarely used, displaying my full title. Olivia Martinez, CEO and owner, Verde Restaurant Group. The silence that followed was absolute. That's impossible, my father finally managed. You're a chef. Just a chef. No, I corrected him. I'm a chef because I love cooking. I'm a business owner because I'm good at it. And I'm successful because you taught me an important lesson. Sometimes the people who should support you the most will become your biggest obstacles. All this time, my mother whispered, looking around at the restaurant, my restaurant, with new eyes. Every time we tried to stop you, you were actually trying to sabotage your own daughter's multimillion-dollar company. I finished for her. Ironic, isn't it? You wanted me to be successful, but couldn't recognize success unless it fit your narrow definition. The kitchen behind us hummed with activity, my team executing the choreographed dance of a high-end service with perfect precision. Through the windows, we could see the dining room full of happy customers enjoying meals I had designed. Why didn't you tell us? My father asked, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. Would you have believed me? I countered. Or would you have found some way to dismiss this too? Called it luck, or a phase, or another hobby? Their silence was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen. I continued, my voice firm but not unkind. First, you're going to enjoy a 9-course tasting menu that showcases exactly what your hobby chef daughter can do. Then, we're going to have a serious discussion about boundaries and respect. Over the next 3 hours, I watched my parents experience my culinary vision through each carefully crafted course. Their expressions shifted from shock to reluctant appreciation to genuine amazement as dish after dish arrived, each one demonstrating both artistic creativity and technical mastery. By the dessert course, a deconstructed tiramisu that had earned one of our restaurants a Michelin star, something had changed in their demeanor. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a dawning understanding of what they failed to see all these years. My mother paused, searching for words. This is extraordinary, Olivia. All of it. This is what I've been trying to show you, I replied. That success doesn't have to look like your version of it. That passion can build something powerful if you give it room to grow. My father stared into his coffee cup, uncharacteristically quiet. Finally, he looked up. We were wrong. Not just about the restaurants, but about everything. We were so focused on what we thought was best for you that we couldn't see what you were actually building. The question is, I said, what happens now? The answer came in small steps over the following months. My parents, perhaps for the first time, had to earn their way back into my life. They started with written apologies to every person they contacted in their attempts to sabotage my restaurants. Then came the difficult task of rebuilding trust. To their credit, they tried. My father started actually tasting the food instead of just pushing it around his plate. My mother asked questions about the business, genuinely interested in understanding what I'd built. They attended restaurant openings as proud parents rather than saboteurs. Last week, I found my father in deep conversation with Marco about the chemistry behind different cooking techniques. It's fascinating, he told me later. The precision, the science behind it, it's not so different from medicine, really. That's what I've been saying for 15 years, I reminded him. He had the grace to look embarrassed. Sometimes the hardest things to see are right in front of us. The health inspector who tried to disrupt our opening night, he was reassigned after an investigation revealed he'd acted on false complaints. My parents wrote a formal apology to the health department, taking full responsibility for their actions. Yesterday, I received a surprising request from my mother. She wanted to host a family dinner, not at their house or a fancy restaurant, but in one of my restaurant's teaching kitchens. I thought, she said hesitantly, you could teach me some basics. If you're willing. It was a small gesture, but a meaningful one. An acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, her daughter had something valuable to teach her. The Verde Restaurant Group continues to grow. We're opening our 16th location next month. A cooking school and restaurant incubator designed to help other passionate chefs build their dreams. My parents will be at the opening, this time to support rather than sabotage. The owner's table at Harvest Table, where everything changed that night, has become a family tradition. We meet there monthly, not to rehash old hurts, but to build something new. My father still occasionally mentions medical school, but now it's a joke between us rather than a weapon. You know, he said during our last dinner, watching me plate a complicated dish with surgical precision, maybe you did become a kind of doctor after all. You just heal people with food instead of medicine." Coming from him, it was more than a compliment. It was an acceptance of who I am and what I've chosen to be. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's giving them the chance to finally get it right.